If you're taking a small pill every morning for your blood pressure and you're still feeling exhausted, gaining weight around your middle, or struggling to climb a flight of stairs without feeling winded, there's a real chance your doctor has you on a beta blocker. And the science is telling us something most physicians still haven't caught up with. That medication may actually be working against you. I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell, and this channel exists to bring you the latest evidence-based research on senior health, simplified and designed for adults over 60. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that button now, because what I'm covering today could completely change the conversation at your next doctor's appointment. So let's get right into it. Beta blockers. You probably know them by their brand names Metoprolol, low pressor, Norman, or their generic names Metoprolol and atenolol. They have been prescribed for high blood pressure for over 5 decades. Doctors write tens of millions of prescriptions for them every single year. They're inexpensive. They're familiar. And for a very long time, they were considered the gold standard for treating hypertension. Here's the problem. The research has moved on. And for many seniors with uncomplicated high blood pressure, beta blockers are no longer the best choice and may actually be making several things worse simultaneously. Let me explain what a beta blocker actually does in your body. Your heart has receptors on it. Think of them like locks on a door. Adrenaline is the key that fits those locks, and when it connects, your heart beats faster and harder. Beta blockers sit inside those locks so the adrenaline can't get in. That slows your heart rate and reduces the force of each beat, which brings blood pressure down. That sounds reasonable. And for certain conditions, recovering from a heart attack, managing heart failure, treating dangerous heart rhythms, beta blockers are genuinely life-saving. We're not questioning their value there. But for run-of-the-mill high blood pressure and otherwise healthy seniors, the evidence has shifted dramatically. The turning point came with a landmark study called the ASCOT trial, the Anglo-Scandinavian Cardiac Outcomes Trial, published in The Lancet. It followed over 19,000 patients with high blood pressure and compared those taking a beta blocker plus a diuretic against those taking a calcium channel blocker plus an ACE inhibitor. The trial was stopped early because the results were that clear. The group on beta blockers had significantly more strokes, more heart attacks, and more new diagnoses of diabetes. The calcium channel blocker group had 23% fewer major cardiovascular events. 23%. That is not a small difference. Following that and other confirming studies, the United Kingdom's National Institute for Health and Care Excellence formally removed beta blockers from their recommended first-line treatment for hypertension. They are no longer the preferred choice in British guidelines. Yet millions of Americans remain on them as their primary blood pressure medication, often because their doctor prescribed it years ago and nobody has revisited that decision since. Comment below right now. Are you currently taking metoprolol, atenolol, or another beta blocker for your blood pressure? Just yes or no, I want to understand how many of you this is affecting. Now let me walk you through the specific ways these medications may be working against you, particularly if you're over 60. The first issue is fatigue and exercise intolerance, and this one matters more than most doctors acknowledge. When you block the adrenaline receptors in your heart, you limit how high your heart rate can climb. For a younger person behind a desk, that ceiling may feel invisible. But for a 65-year-old who wants to walk the neighborhood, swim laps, or keep up with grandchildren, that limitation means you hit a wall much sooner. You feel winded faster. Your legs feel heavy. Exercise feels harder than it should. And because physical activity is one of the most powerful tools we have for naturally lowering blood pressure, tolerating it less well creates a frustrating cycle. The medication makes exercise harder. And less exercise means your blood pressure stays elevated anyway. Harold was 71 years old when he came in reporting fatigue, so profound that he'd stopped his evening walks entirely. He had been on atenolol for 3 years. In that time, he gained 14 pounds, his blood sugar had drifted into pre-diabetic range, and his energy was what he described as running on half a tank all day, every day. His previous doctor had attributed it to aging. When we reviewed his medication alongside the current evidence, the picture became much clearer. The second concern is metabolic damage, and this one is well documented. Beta blockers increase insulin resistance and raise triglycerides while lowering HDL, your good cholesterol. A comprehensive meta-analysis published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology found that patients on beta blockers had a 22% higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to those on other antihypertensives. For seniors already managing blood sugar or sitting in that pre-diabetic gray zone, that is a meaningful risk to be adding with a medication that isn't even outperforming its alternatives. Here is what genuinely surprised me when I worked through this data. Beta blockers often do bring your blood pressure numbers down. The cuff reading looks acceptable. The problem is what's happening underneath, the metabolic disruption, the cardiovascular outcomes, the slow erosion of your quality of life. You can show a reading of 128/78 and still be quietly accumulating harm if your medication is working against your metabolic health at the same time. Third, there's the full risk issue that is critically underappreciated in older adults. Beta blockers can cause orthostatic hypotension, a sudden drop in blood pressure when you stand up from sitting or lying down. That brief dizzy feeling when you rise from a chair? For a 73-year-old, that is not just uncomfortable. That is a fracture in waiting. Hip fractures in seniors over 70 carry a 1-year mortality rate approaching 30%. A medication-induced fall is not just a fall. Before I tell you what the research supports as better options, I need to make something absolutely clear, and this could protect your life. Never stop a beta blocker on your own without medical supervision. Stopping abruptly can trigger a dangerous rebound effect, causing your heart rate and blood pressure to spike rapidly, and in some cases triggering a heart attack or a serious arrhythmia. Any transition away from these medications must be supervised by a physician and done gradually over several weeks. What I'm giving you today is information and questions to bring to your doctor, not permission to open your medicine cabinet and make unilateral changes. Now, what does the evidence actually support as better alternatives for seniors with uncomplicated hypertension? 2 medication classes stand out clearly. The first is calcium channel blockers. Amlodipine is the most commonly prescribed. The ASCOT data strongly favored this class over beta blockers. It does not carry the same metabolic risks. It does not limit your exercise capacity the same way. And a large analysis published in the British Medical Journal confirmed that amlodipine was associated with significantly lower stroke risk than atenolol in elderly hypertensive patients specifically. The second strong alternative is ACE inhibitors and their related class, ARBs, angiotensin receptor blockers. Medications like lisinopril, ramipril, losartan, and olmesartan have shown consistent benefit in senior populations, with protective effects for the kidneys, better outcomes in patients managing diabetes, and a lower fall risk profile. ACE inhibitors do cause a persistent dry cough in about 10 to 15% of patients. If that's you, an ARB is generally the better choice and works through a similar mechanism without triggering the cough. Dorothy was 74 when her cardiologist revisited her long-standing beta blocker prescription and transitioned her, gradually over 8 weeks, to amlodipine combined with losartan. Within 3 months, her fasting blood sugar had normalized. She had lost 7 pounds without any intentional dietary changes, and she described feeling like herself again for the first time in years. Her blood pressure readings were actually more consistent, not less. So here is exactly what you should do with this information. First, look at your current medications and identify whether you are taking a beta blocker specifically for blood pressure, not for a diagnosed heart rhythm problem, not post-heart attack management, not for heart failure, but purely for hypertension. The names to look for are metoprolol, atenolol, bisoprolol, propranolol, and carvedilol. Second, write down 3 specific questions before your next appointment. Ask your doctor, was my beta blocker prescribed specifically for hypertension, and does that still reflect current evidence-based guidelines? Ask, have we evaluated my fasting insulin and triglyceride levels recently? And ask, would I be a candidate for transitioning to a calcium channel blocker or an ARB based on my complete health picture? Third, request a formal medication review. If you have been on the same blood pressure medication for more than 2 to 3 years without a reassessment, you are entitled to ask for one. Many seniors are taking medications that were standard of care in 2005 and have since been reconsidered by the evidence. Fourth, if any transition is recommended, confirm the tapering schedule with your doctor. A responsible physician will reduce beta blockers gradually, typically over 4 to 8 weeks, and monitor you throughout the process. Fifth, begin tracking your symptoms now. Keep a simple daily log of your morning blood pressure reading, your energy level on a scale of 1 to 10, and your fasting blood sugar if you're monitoring it. 3 to 4 weeks of your own data gives your physician something concrete to work with and makes the conversation far more productive. One important clarification before we close. There are absolutely patients for whom beta blockers remain the correct and appropriate medication. If you have coronary artery disease, a history of heart attack, diagnosed heart failure, or certain arrhythmias including atrial fibrillation, the calculation is different. The evidence supporting beta blockers in those conditions is solid and well established. The concern we've discussed today applies specifically to seniors whose only diagnosis is hypertension, elevated blood pressure without an accompanying cardiac condition. If that's you, this conversation is absolutely worth having with your doctor. If your blood pressure medication is leaving you exhausted, your weight is creeping upward, your blood sugar is trending in the wrong direction, and your prescription hasn't been reviewed in years, you now have the research, the language, and the specific questions to walk into that appointment differently. You deserve a treatment plan built on current evidence, not decades-old habits. Comment "Reviewing mine" if you're planning to bring this to your doctor. Comment your current blood pressure medication below. I read every single response, and your question may become a future video. If someone you love is struggling with their blood pressure management, please share this with them today. One conversation armed with the right information can genuinely change outcomes. I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell. Subscribe if you haven't already, because next week we're covering the silent mineral deficiency that makes blood pressure medications significantly less effective, and most doctors never test for it. I'll see you there. Take good care of yourselves.